Dong Jin is an expert in observation and data mining at a casino. With his sharp eye alone, Dong Jin can discern a person's net worth, their profession, and the amount of money they earn from their work. His job doesn't stop there. It goes beyond guessing a customer's profession. It's about analyzing the pain points of those who come to gamble. When they've lost everything, he employs a strategy, inviting the bankrupt gambler to a complimentary, high-end meal and, conveniently, gifting them a free luxury resort stay. This soothes the pain of their losses. And that's how Dong Jin helps the casino generate maximum profit. After Dong Jin's presentation, Director Kang said, "Casinos aren't places for charity. Frankly, if customers sell their houses and cars just to gamble, that's not our concern. What this place does is figure out how to get customers to come back after losing everything, to maximize the casino's profits." The chairman, hearing this, was very pleased with Dong Jin. After the meeting, his superior, Young Ho, offered to treat Dong Jin to a premium beef dinner, as he'd done a great job today, but Dong Jin was busy and quickly declined, promising to take him up on it next time. At the same time, the chairman came out, feeling that Dong Jin's idea for increasing the casino's profits was very intriguing, so the chairman invited Dong Jin to play golf with him. However, Dong Jin doesn't play any sports, causing the chairman to exclaim, "You're a true hidden gem." Suddenly, the man who'd lost everything earlier reappeared at the casino entrance. He had fallen for Dong Jin's reduce the pain of loss trap and pawned his car. Seeing the immediate results of Dong Jin's plan, the chairman handed Dong Jin his business card and said, "If the opportunity arises, I'll invite you to dinner," implicitly meaning, "I'll put a talent like you to good use." Upon returning to the parking garage, Dong Jin discovered that his car had been vandalized. He went to the police station to report it, but couldn't identify the perpetrator, so he simply left his information for a police report. When asked about his profession, he said he was a data analyst, basically an office worker. The officer remarked, "You must make good money doing that, having a nice car like this at such a young age." Suddenly, two men behind them began arguing and fighting. Observing them, Dong Jin told the officer, "These two aren't strangers. Based on the detergent stains on their clothes and the white animal hairs on both of them, I'd guess these two are brothers from the same household." The officer was skeptical, so he took a white hair from each of them to examine it. Suddenly, the men's mother appeared. At that moment, Dong Jin's analytical eye proved to be accurate. The younger brother, unable to win the fight against his older brother, tattled to his mother, and they were both afraid of her, so they didn't dare do anything in front of her. Now seeing Dong Jin's abilities, the officer exclaimed, "No wonder you can afford a house and a car. I have to admit, you're talented." On the express train heading home, a man suddenly stood in front of a girl dressed from head to toe and confessed his feelings. "Mayong, if you're going to reject me, at least give me a reason that makes sense. What do you mean it's dangerous to be around you? Explain it to me." Dong Jin didn't pay much attention at first, just assuming it was a typical situation of someone confessing and being rejected. But when he heard the name Mayong and looked at the girl's face, Dong Jin was stunned and realized it was the same girl he had missed out on years ago. It was definitely the Park Mayong he used to know. Dong Jin never believed in fate until he met Mayong again. Back in high school, Dong Jin was always a diligent student, studying even during recess. But his friends never let him study in peace, constantly dragging him out to the schoolyard to play soccer. And it was on that fateful day that Dong Jin met a girl who was, you could say, naturally beautiful even without makeup, and he completely forgot about the soccer game with his friends, mesmerized by the girl eating lunch alone in the school's storage room. From the moment he first saw her, Dong Jin felt like he'd been struck by Cupid's arrow, unable to take his eyes off Mayong. And back then, there was always a rumor that wherever Mayong went, bad luck followed, which was why she was always alone. One rainy day, seeing that Mayong didn't have an umbrella, a guy named Young Hwan offered to walk her home. On the way, as they neared Mayong's house, a bus suddenly swerved past, causing Mayong to anxiously look at Young Hwan as if she was expecting something terrible to happen. Young Hwan immediately gave the umbrella to Mayong and ran home. But before long, lightning bolts started striking from the sky, leaving Mayong in a daze once more. It happened again. And the next day, Young Hwan's funeral was held at the school, witnessed by his classmates. Dongjin learned from his friends that Young Hwan had been struck by lightning on his way home. Hearing this, he became curious and glanced at Mayong. She was standing there crying as if she was atoning for the deceased friend's death. Furthermore, during a group study session at the library, another girl added that an upperclassman who had been honored in front of the school gates had been stung to death by hornets. Apparently, Mayong had been present at that scene too. Whenever you're around her, bad omens and bad luck always strike. People even nicknamed her witch. Hearing this made Dongjin angry, and he said, "Why do you guys only look at part of the picture and judge the entire situation? Let me give you an easy-to-understand example. Suppose there's a thief who always steals ice cream from the cafeteria, and Ho Young has a sweet tooth and is always there during recess. Would you immediately accuse Ho Young or something?" The friend next to him said, "Why are you dragging Ho Young into this? How can you convict him based on that?" Dongjin replied, "Exactly. Just because Mayong is present where bad luck happens doesn't mean you can label her a witch. It's like how Detective Conan is labeled a bringer of death." Mid-sentence, the homeroom teacher told everyone to shut up and focus on studying. "Save the gossip or the romance for college," he said. The next day, at home, Dongjin asked his mom where the camera battery was. His mom told him it was in the TV cabinet drawer. Dongjin rummaged around for a while, not finding it, and kept bothering his mom. As usual, if he didn't know where something was, he asked his mom. She found the battery Dongjin needed right away. It was truly a mother's superpower to find things. At the school camping trip, Rong Min was snapping photos of his friends left and right. Suddenly, he noticed Mayong sitting nearby, making him irresistibly angle his camera to take a few shots of her. Just then, a classmate coincidentally ran past and got injured, shocking everyone. When Mayong saw this, she froze, filled with worry. "It's happening again," she thought. Seeing this, Dongjin started to have doubts about the rumors surrounding Mayong. The next day at school, as usual, everyone avoided Mayong, afraid that being near her would bring bad luck. But Dongjin didn't believe it. He looked at Mayong as if he wanted to figure out if the bad luck was real. But his friends called him back to play soccer. At the soccer field, he found Mayong sitting at the storage shed, eating lunch and shielding herself from the sun. Motivated by his crush, Dongjin went to his mom's convenience store after returning home, pretending to help out. Seeing her son, who usually went straight home, helping her out, Dongjin's mom asked, "You need money again, don't you?" Dongjin was caught red-handed and smiled sheepishly. "Fine, what else can I do? You're my son. Tell me, what's the money for?" Dongjin made up an excuse about building a shelter at school for his soccer team to rest in and avoid skin cancer. But in reality, he was just being nice to the girl he liked. After receiving her mother's consent, Dongjin flattered her with an affectionate kiss on the cheek. His mother initially resisted slightly, but seeing her son like that brought her joy as well. Who could blame her? He was her only child. As a result, the next day at the baseball game, Mayong arrived at her usual lunch spot to discover that a sunshade had mysteriously appeared. Seeing this, Dongjin couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. The peace didn't last long. That winter, another student passed away. Through a classmate, Dongjin learned that the previous week, a male student who had a crush on Mayong had confessed his feelings to her. But Mayong, not wanting anyone to experience misfortune near her, immediately rejected him. The boy, still smitten with Mayong, was determined to follow her to the end. At one point on their walk, Mayong ignored him, so the boy sped ahead on his bicycle. Unexpectedly, a power line snapped and fell into the street. The boy died instantly. Witnessing this misfortune only fueled Dongjin's curiosity about Mayong. He wanted to talk to her, but ever since she left school, Dongjin hadn't seen Mayong once until today. Recognizing the girl he had been searching for all those years, Dongjin hurried after Mayong down an alley. Mayong, sensing someone was following her, turned around but saw no one. Dongjin, hiding to the side, wondered why he was following her, especially since she didn't even know him. After a moment of thought, he lost track of Mayong. Further down an alley, Dongjin found Mayong feeding cats, saying, "I'm so tired. Is there a way to live without seeing other people? I don't know how to keep living, and I don't know how to disappear. I don't know anything. Dongjin had genuinely hoped that Mayong was doing well, wherever she was, but it seemed the truth was that her life was unexpectedly miserable. The next day at work, remembering the old rumors about misfortune befalling anyone who interacted with Mayong, Dongjin tried searching online for the video of the confession from the previous day. He discovered footage taken after he had left, showing the boy who had confessed to Mayong suddenly collapsing from a stroke. This made him truly start to question the rumors from back then about Mayong being a witch. That evening, needing some solace, Dongjin called his best friend, Jung Hyuk, out for a drink. Dongjin asked, "Is it possible for someone to bring about a law of bad luck? Like, someone goes to a restaurant, and they run out of food when it's their turn. Someone goes to print something, and the printer breaks down when they try to use it. Is that a law? What if these things really existed? If someone was cursed, haunted for life, how miserable would that person's life be?" Dongjin felt so sorry for Mayong that he couldn't help but cry. As for Mayong, she only dared to live alone and work remotely on her computer. She didn't want to interact with anyone, so she had locked herself away in an apartment far removed from society, as if she were living alone in a miniature world. This made Mayong feel like she was imprisoning herself, and every time she thought that, she told herself, "It's okay. I'm fine." She remembered how strange things began to happen around her constantly, years ago. When she was jumping rope with her friends, a boy ran by and teased Mayong. As a result, the boy fell into a manhole and had a serious accident. One day, a boy confessed his feelings to Mayong and gave her a gift. On his way home, he was immediately involved in an accident. Then came the high school graduation ceremony of a senior named Ik-jong. It seemed to be the first time Mayong had actively liked someone, and that person liked her too. After the ceremony at the church, Ik-jong approached Mayong and said that he was the one who wrote the notebook she had. He hoped she would read it. Ik-jong then revealed that he would be moving to Seoul and wished that Mayong would eventually move there to study with him. But before he could say anything further, he suddenly started foaming at the mouth and collapsed. Mayong told Ik-jong's father that it looked like he had been stung by a hornet, which caused the father to panic and rush Ik-jong to the hospital. Because of this incident, when Mayong arrived at school, everyone was gossiping about how she brought bad luck to those around her. The boys in her class were still unaware of the bad luck that Mayong supposedly brought. A classmate named Lee Min-hyuk said, "Wow, the beautiful Mayong is in our class. Now I have no reason to skip school." The female students then asked, "You were there when Ik-jong had his accident, right? Is it true that you bring bad luck to anyone who likes you?" Suddenly, a male student stepped in to defend her. What proof is there that approaching Mayong will bring bad luck? Returning home, Mayong's father, unaware of the rumors circulating about his daughter at school, simply asked, "How's school going lately, honey?" "How are your friends?" Mayong replied. "I don't really talk to my classmates much. I usually don't like to talk." But in reality, it was because she didn't want to bring misfortune to anyone. Suddenly, her father gave her a card, saying, "This is your birthday gift. Sometimes, treating your friends to something nice will make them appreciate you." Mayong replied, "I feel so guilty because it's my birthday, and you can't hold a memorial service for Mom." On the day Mayong was born, her mother had a difficult delivery and passed away. So, every time it was Mayong's birthday, she also felt heartbroken because it coincided with her mother's death anniversary. In the following days, there were no male students in Mayong's class anymore. It was announced that they all had food poisoning and had to stay home. Mayong began to realize that her curse seemed to only affect the opposite sex. Anyone who had feelings for her or wanted to get close to her would experience bad luck. One rainy afternoon, a friend named Jung Hwan noticed that she walked home alone every day, so he offered to walk with Mayong. Her house was a bit far, so Jung Hwan asked why she always walked home. "You probably can't guess, but if I take the bus with other guys, the whole bus might have an accident." As they neared Mayong's house, she thanked Jung Hwan and said, "This is far enough." He then revealed that he didn't live in this direction at all. Today he wanted to walk with her simply because he liked Mayong. "I believe that the male students in your class getting food poisoning has absolutely nothing to do with you. And by the way, the guys are gossiping about you a lot." Mayong thought they believed she was unlucky, but this was just an excuse for young Hwan to compliment her beauty and intelligence, and to express his feelings for her. Without giving Mayong a chance to refuse, young Hwan handed her the umbrella and ran off. But he didn't know that today would be the last day he could like anyone. Lightning struck from the sky, and Mayong realized that it had come again, the misfortune she always feared. She wanted to warn young Hwan just now. And young Hwan's death was therefore held at Mayong's school, causing her to feel increasingly tormented and isolate herself from everyone around her. At the school camping trip, a boy came to give her a can of Coke and planned to confess his feelings, but because she didn't want anyone to be involved with her and die, Mayong refused him. Fortunately, she refused him directly, so this friend only had an accident but didn't die. And continuing to see the people who contacted her encountering misfortune made her increasingly frightened. The nickname Witch was given to her. Later and later, those who had contacted Mayong had accidents one after another, not light but heavy, not bleeding, also fell and broke bones, making people begin to believe in the rumors that she was the unlucky witch. The people who had liked Mayong and had accidents also began to avoid her. She walked around the school. Everywhere she went, there were rumors about Mayong. Anyone who liked her and confessed their feelings to Mayong would meet with terrible misfortune. That evening, after returning home, her father asked, "Is school going well these days?" Not wanting to worry her father, Mayong simply said, "My friends are friendly and nice to me." But at school, she always avoided people and spent all her time alone. Then one day, a classmate named Sang-ho suddenly came up to her and asked, "Why are you always by yourself?" Mayong didn't want the misfortune surrounding her to continue, so she didn't respond and wanted to leave immediately. Sang-ho stopped her and said, "Actually, on the day young Hwan died, I saw you two together. As for him being struck by lightning, that was just his time, and I don't believe you're some kind of jinxed witch like the rumors say. Do you think that if you hadn't been with young Hwan that day, he wouldn't have died? Is that why you haven't talked to anyone since and always stay alone? Why are you making yourself suffer like this? You can blame it on the weather." But Mayong didn't care and said, "Just stop it. What do you know about my life?" But Sang-ho didn't give up and decided to follow Mayong to the road near her house. Sang-ho decided to confess that he liked Mayong, which made her uncomfortable. It's happening again. Sang-ho said that he didn't want to have any regrets later, so he was telling her everything on his mind today. After saying that, he sped off on his motorbike. He didn't expect that his last words would come true. A power line had snapped and was heading straight for Sang-ho, catching him off guard and bringing death so quickly. As a result, once again, a funeral was held at Mayong's school. She was heartbroken and extremely sad, but she didn't have the right to mourn them, because she was the cause of it all. Even the chair she often sat on was covered with curses. Mayong felt like there was no place for her here anymore, so she decided to leave this place, leave the human world. Her dropping out of school angered her father. He asked, "Where's your backpack?" But Mayong didn't answer. Annoyed, he went to the school to ask a friend named Da-yoon. Through their conversation, he learned that his daughter was living a miserable life at school. He asked, "Who started these rumors?" Da-yoon could only say, "Actually, everyone sees it that way." This made him feel even more helpless, and he could only go to his daughter's classroom and bring her things home. But as soon as he got to the schoolyard, he saw Dong-jin using a chisel to remove the curses about Mayong from the chair. Curious, he asked, and Dong-jin said, "I don't believe in those ridiculous rumors. She's not a witch." Her father asked, "How can you prove it?" Dong-jin, although he didn't know how yet, would definitely find a way to prove that Mayong wasn't a witch like everyone said. Mayong's father hoped that he could prove it. In Mayong's neighborhood, the rumors that she was a witch had spread throughout the town. Her father couldn't stand it, so he wanted to confront those who were bad-mouthing his daughter. Dong-jin's mother passed by and stopped her car to listen to what was happening in the town. After Mayong's father left, she asked the older women there what was going on. They said, "That Mr. Park's daughter is very alluring to men, so be careful with your boy. Not to mention, there have been many accidents involving those who liked that girl." Meanwhile, back at home, Mayong didn't want to go anywhere. All she wanted to do was raise cats to forget everything. She asked her father if he could buy her some cat food. But when her father went to Dongjin's mother to buy the cat food, she was startled and refused to sell it. However, she grabbed a bag of cat food and quickly gave it to Mayong's father, saying she wouldn't take any money, afraid that he would bring bad luck to her house. Mayong's father was angry and left the money behind before leaving. It's hard not to feel sorry for the father and daughter's situation. On high school graduation day, Dongjin, upon returning home, suddenly saw Da-yoon standing in front of Mayong's house, calling for her. But after calling for a while without getting an answer, Da-yoon left a notebook and flowers as a farewell. Dongjin was about to do the same, but when he heard the sound of the door opening, he ran away as fast as he could. He liked the girl but was as timid as a dry cricket. But Mayong staying at home all the time worried her father. He decided to find a new job and told Mayong, "I hope you'll continue studying so you can go to university. I have a more stable job now, so don't worry." As he spoke, he suddenly felt a pain in his tooth and paused. He had been suffering from gingivitis for some time. Hearing her father say that, Mayong decided to start studying again. One day, she decided she wanted to work with her father, because he had no one to help him. She offered to do so. Her father was happy to hear this, as he thought it would be nice for the two of them to work together. He said, "Let's consider it a date, shall we?" But he didn't know that this sentence touched a forbidden topic for Mayong. As a result, when Mayong was bringing potatoes to her father, she was bitten by a snake and immediately lost consciousness. Mayong's father immediately dropped his tools and ran to her. When Mayong woke up, her wound was tied off, and her father was lying next to her. He had sucked out the venom, and because he already had bleeding gums, he was poisoned as well. Mayong hugged her father and begged him not to leave. Her father could only apologize and say, "I'm sorry I can't stay with you any longer. Don't stay here anymore. Leave." And after this incident, she left this painful town. Thinking back to the past, when Dongjin was a freshman in college, he was invited by his statistics professor, Young-sik, to introduce himself to the class. The professor asked why Dongjin chose this major, and he honestly replied, "Because there's a problem in my life that I must solve using statistics." Everyone in the class was impressed, and the professor was quite surprised and exclaimed, "That's very fresh and unique." After class, Dongjin was having lunch with his friends when he heard them talking about Jung Hyuk, who was disliked by the entire department because he was cold and distant and didn't have any friends. Dongjin looked at that guy and remembered how lonely Mayong used to be. He spoke up, disagreeing, "You guys are wrong." After saying that, he got up and went over to Jung Hyuk, summoning all his courage. Dongjin proactively initiated a friendly handshake with Jung Hyuk and asked him a few questions, casually mentioning that his mother grows potatoes and promised to share some with him. But in response to that enthusiasm, Jung Hyuk just ignored him, silently got up, and left, leaving Dongjin feeling slightly embarrassed as he ate. Even so, he didn't give up. When he saw Jung Hyuk passing by the convenience store, he immediately struck up a conversation, but he was still given the cold shoulder. Suddenly, Dongjin remembered he had once mentioned giving Jung Hyuk potatoes, so he grabbed the bag and chased after Jung Hyuk to hand-deliver them, only then returning to his work. Jung Hyuk watched this scene and was puzzled by Dongjin's actions. To resolve his confusion, Jung Hyuk spoke up when Dongjin invited him to eat. He asked, "Why are you treating me like this? If someone doesn't want to talk, you should avoid them, but you don't seem to understand that." After saying this, he was about to leave when Dongjin said that looking at him reminded him of someone from the past, and he hadn't been brave enough to do this then, and he didn't want to repeat that mistake. He also sincerely apologized if he had made Jung Hyuk uncomfortable. After that, somehow the two ended up eating together, though at separate tables, which was so comical that Jung Hyuk blurted out, "I didn't say I would eat with you." Then he wondered why Dongjin was working so many shifts. Was it to earn pocket money, or was his family struggling financially? Dongjin thought for a moment and then confided that he wanted to help someone who wanted to go to college. Soon after, it was Dongjin's shift, so he had to eat quickly and get to work. Jung Hyuk probably thought to himself how passionate this guy was. And from some point on, Dongjin started conversations with Jung Hyuk that were actually reciprocated, without being ignored anymore. Although things were a bit awkward, but gradually they became friendly and eventually became friends. During summer vacation, Dong-jin went home to visit his mother. She happily embraced him, and even cooked him a lavish meal that made Dong-jin feel like she was celebrating his birthday. The two had a pleasant meal together. He told her about making a new friend named Jung Hyuk, and shared the good news that he might be able to get a scholarship. After eating, Dong-jin went to his room to look at his high school photos, when his mother came in and told him to visit the neighbors, inadvertently mentioning that the laundry shop's son had been hospitalized. He wondered why someone who studied martial arts would be hospitalized, so he followed up to ask more. His mother told him about Mayong, the girl who was rumored to be a witch, and had just lost her father. The laundry shop's son comforted her, but on the way back, he was attacked by a wild boar. Hearing this, Dong-jin was stunned. His mother even believed Mayong was actually a witch. This made him uncomfortable, so he immediately defended her, explaining that accidents and losses happen frequently, and it's just a coincidence, not related to Mayong. After saying this, he was annoyed and was about to go to Mayong's house when his mother frowned and said, "She's gone." A few months ago, there was a meeting in the village, and everyone decided to go to her house and tell her to move away. And Dong-jin probably doesn't know that your mother participated. Hearing this news, Dong-jin ran as fast as he could to Mayong's house, and seeing the "for sale" sign in the window made his heart sink. He went inside. Nobody was there. Dong-jin sat in a corner and looked at the mortality rate reports, disproving the existence of witches that he himself had compiled. He wanted to help her escape the stigma of being a witch, so Mayong could have a normal life, but it was too late. He was too late. He didn't even get to express his feelings for her. All of this made him cry. He didn't care about the papers flying around because they didn't mean anything anymore, because she was gone. Back at school, Dong-jin was called to the office by teacher Young-sik. He got straight to the point, asking why Dong-jin was trying so hard to study so much. The teacher didn't like students who studied too hard, because the harder they study, the more likely they are to run away later. Although he was blunt, he was the one who helped Dong-jin recognize the flaws in his witch mortality reports. That's right, the data that Dong-jin was trying to cram in to match the answer, "not a witch," wasn't mathematics. He handed Dong-jin a paper with the questions he had written down. From those clues, Dong-jin began to investigate everything. Was Mayong a witch or not? After days and nights of collecting data, nothing matched what the teacher provided in Mayong's case. The final question was, what did the accidents have in common? Remembering all the accidents involving young men who confessed their love to Mayong, they all ended fatally. So, can we conclude now that the common denominator in these accidents is Mayong's presence, making her a witch? Dong-jin learned this answer and was completely devastated, crying in the rain to ease his sorrow. Luckily, his friend appeared and shielded him with an umbrella, listening to him pour out his heart in sobs. Time flew by, and both of them became senior college students. Jung Hyuk diligently studied to pass the civil service exam for the police, while Dong-jin was recommended by his professor to Cho, an alumnus, helping him pursue his path to becoming a data analyst. Everyone eventually has their own direction, busy with the future ahead. As usual, Dong-jin worked until late before returning home. On the way, while waiting for the train, he received a call from his mother. Her voice was tired, slowly delivering the news that the doctor diagnosed her illness as a bit serious, requiring a more thorough examination in Seoul. This news stunned Dong-jin, but he tried to remain calm and reassure her. "Mom, everything will be all right, don't worry too much." Then, what was coming finally arrived. Dong-jin's mother's illness worsened. He tried to do everything to make her happy, even secretly bringing her saju because she craved it. The two of them sat and talked on the rooftop. She said she wanted to travel around the world, but now that was impossible. Dong-jin immediately promised to take her when she got better. But she knew that she was about to leave this world. She advised him to put the house and store up for sale. Although he didn't want to, she said it would ease her mind, and he would have fewer burdens. After that, she shared her last wish upon passing away. She wanted a large, magnificent floral hearse, covered with beautiful real flowers. The story of the mother and son was filled with heartbreak, and tears fell silently. The next morning, following his mother's instructions, Dong-jin returned to his hometown to process the paperwork for selling the store. where he coincidentally learned that his mother had once bought Mayong's house. He was quite surprised because he didn't know about this. Back at the hospital, he was massaging his mother's legs and talking to her, casually asking why she had bought Mayong's house back then. She slowly said, "Back in the village, the one who drove the girl away was me. At that time, I passed by and saw Mr. Pak arguing and confronting the people in the village. And then two neighbor ladies came and said that Mr. Pak's daughter was very seductive to men." She laughed dismissively, not believing it, but the two neighbor ladies said, "Don't you know the rumors about Mayong? The male students who have accidents are terrifying." Hearing this, she felt worried because her son was also attending this school. The peak was when she accidentally saw the photos Rong Rin secretly took of Mayong. Therefore, during the emergency meeting, she volunteered to support driving Mayong away because she was afraid that Dongjin would also have the same fate as those male students who had accidents when getting involved with Mayong. The group rushed to the girl's house, and she knocked hard until Mayong opened the door. She was stunned by the emaciated and weak image of this rumored girl. Mayong understood painfully and bowed her head to apologize. "I'll leave right now." The group didn't believe Mayong's words, but Dongjin's mother said awkwardly to defend her, "She's not the type to lie," and then pulled everyone away. Honestly, she didn't have the heart to do that to Mayong, but for her son, a mother wanted to protect her child, so she cruelly did that to another child. That evening, Mayong, with her skinny body, dragged her suitcase from alley to the bus station. Luckily, Dongjin's mother passed by and offered to drive her there. On the car, the two talked, and she learned that Mayong had no relatives or family. Mayong quietly said, Thank you for being kind to me during this time. Thank you for giving me a ride." She also apologized for everything. Hearing these words, she felt somewhat self-reproachful. That's also why she bought Mayong's house, so that when signing the contract for the house, she could meet the girl again to apologize. But the girl disappeared completely. She was a little happy to know that Mayong was not a witch because she saw the report papers that Dongjin had left behind. She picked up each piece of paper and ironed it out, trying to read the words and the numbers that her son analyzed to prove that Mayong was not a witch. She believed in fate, that Dongjin would meet Mayong again eventually. At that time, tell the girl for me that I apologize to her. Dongjin nodded, choked up, and said, "I understand, Mom." He also said, "I love you, Mom." The mother and son hugged each other and cried. Finally, his mother passed away. Dongjin was heartbroken and blamed himself. Why doesn't Mom even have a single photo of her own? I love taking pictures so much. I'll probably miss Mom a lot. After holding the funeral according to his mother's instructions, he went into the room and took out a box of items. Inside was the report that his mother had read over and over until it was wrinkled and stained with her fingerprints. Perhaps she believed my statistics that she wasn't a witch. No sooner said than done. Dongjin and his colleagues began researching the mystery surrounding Mayong, referencing the crime mapping model of the San Francisco Police Department. They utilized crime data categorized by area, time, and severity. However, finding this insufficient, they directly questioned local residents, gathering information about underground crimes. Analyzing the data helped them redeploy patrols, resulting in a significant reduction in crime rates. From this, his colleagues concluded that they should create a map of incidents and accidents related to the witch. Dongjin nodded. Exactly. He decided to extract the data and identify the influencing factors. If they could find patterns, they could predict and prevent accidents, saving many lives. Currently, Mayong's primary job was translating French for websites, allowing her to make ends meet. She owed this job to Yoon Sil. She was grateful to her. Yoon Sil reminded her to eat well and not skip meals, worrying about her getting sick. But Mayong said she was trying to lose weight. In reality, she was saving money so that one day, she could go to the place she longed to be. Mayong lived within her own confined space, avoiding social contact. This was the best solution she could manage. She probably felt a little lonely. She looked at the two scarecrows she had made. They were a couple. Perhaps, deep down, Mayong hoped someone would come to her side, even though she knew the chances were slim to none. The next morning, Dongjin packed his belongings to resign. The department head tried to stop him, questioning why he was suddenly quitting when the company was thriving. He also reminded Dong Jin that over a dozen employees depended on him, suggesting that it was due to low salary. The department head even offered to share more company stock with him. But Dong Jin's mind was made up, and he simply said, "I have something I absolutely have to do. I'm afraid I'll regret it if I miss this opportunity." In the end, the department head gave in and agreed to let Dong Jin leave. In reality, Dong Jin's reason for quitting was to get close to Mayong, and he even rented a house across from her. Initially, renting the house didn't go smoothly because the apartment on the third floor with the best vantage point was already occupied. Dong Jin immediately bribed the real estate agent to help him meet and negotiate with the tenant, but the tenant coldly refused. Therefore, Dong Jin devised a plan to approach him by buying him food, helping him with small tasks, and giving him gifts. This made the tenant feel awkward and annoyed, eventually leading him to confront Dong Jin. Finally, the tenant agreed to let him see the apartment. Dong Jin offered to pay 3 months' rent plus a moving fee in order to move in. It was too good a deal to refuse, so Dong Jin successfully moved in. Before he could gather much information, the police called to inform him that they had identified the suspect. The person was named Jun Ho Jang, who was wanted by the police. He used to run a company, a small paper cup factory that went bankrupt. Apparently, his loan application had been approved, but the lending regulations suddenly changed, leading to his bankruptcy. And the loan approval system was developed by Dong Jin's company. That's why Jun Ho vandalized Dong Jin's car. Hearing this, he sighed and felt a headache coming on. This was a personal vendetta, so Dong Jin asked if he could withdraw the complaint. The police officer said that even if he withdrew the complaint in a special case, it would only reduce the punishment. Besides, he hadn't turned himself in yet and was still on the run. Dong Jin understood and left. In the parking lot, an old man suddenly punched Dong Jin repeatedly. He recognized him as Jun Ho. So, he let the old man hit him, and even when a convenience store clerk tried to intervene and call the police, Dong Jin spoke up and said that it was okay and not to call the police. The uncle didn't hold back, continuing to hit him, as if releasing all the frustration that Dong Jin had inadvertently caused, ruining a man's life. Finally, Jun Ho stopped, defeated. The two ended up in a convenience store, grabbing a bite because the uncle was suddenly hungry from all that furious beating. Dong Jin rambled on about how difficult his work was. "I have to collect tons of data and bury myself in calculations." He choked up and apologized to Jun Ho. Seeing his state, the uncle poured out his own misery. "My family is scattered. My son and daughter are with their aunt and uncle, and my wife goes from sauna to sauna. I tried my best every second not to be ashamed in front of my kids, but everything fell apart in an instant." He had even considered suicide, but when he looked into the dark depths of the water, Jun Ho changed his mind. "I'm going to find the person who pushed me to this point, and I'll drag them down to hell with me." Hearing this, Dong Jin felt incredibly guilty, only able to apologize. "I swear, I had no idea." The two men, burdened with their troubles, sat together for who knows how long. With this on his mind, Dong Jin met with Jung Hyuk to ask him to get dinner. Jung Hyuk was surprised. "What happened to your face? You're all bruised." Dong Jin said nonchalantly, "I deserved it." Jung Hyuk couldn't believe he'd gone looking for trouble. Afterward, as they walked and talked, Jung Hyuk's watch suddenly beeped, alerting him to a victim requesting protection. He quickly said goodbye to Dong Jin and sped off to the victim, but it was too late. She had been attacked and had to be taken to the hospital. Her father grabbed Jung Hyuk's collar, accusingly. "What took you so long to get here? You're the one in charge of protection. If you can't do it, just quit." Luckily, Yun A's mother intervened, and they left, leaving Jung Hyuk to blame himself and sigh. The next morning, Dong Jin met with the chairman. They shared a bowl of childhood noodles, just like his mother used to make. After eating, Dong Jin showed the chairman Jun Ho's background. "I'd like the chairman to help this man, because he's been inadvertently harmed by my actions." The chairman was pleased and said, "If it's someone you vouch for, I'll find him a suitable job." He even admired Dong Jin, because in this day and age, people only look out for themselves, but he was reaching out to help someone else. "You're the kind of person that makes me curious." By nighttime, around 2:30 am, the streets would be deserted. Mayong could freely go outside. She happily went downstairs to walk and feed the stray cats. She confided in them, "Are you tired of avoiding people? Why do you all flock to me like this? Suddenly, I feel like a real witch." Little did Mayong know that Dongjin was listening to her disheartened words from behind the wall. That's why Dongjin was even more determined to find any way to break the curse for Mayong, to give her back the everyday life she had lost. Early the next morning, Dongjin returned to Tibik, where they were both born. Here, this place would be the starting point to break the curse for Mayong. He planned to gather his old friends to get to the bottom of it. He went to the village chief to give him some money for taking care of his house while he was away. Then, he wanted to ask about information about the village from the last 10 years. The village chief didn't seem to know much, only mentioning the incident where Mr. Park's daughter caused an accident that injured many people. After she left, there were no more accidents. He did mention the last person injured, the laundry guy's son, who was attacked by a wild boar. So, Dongjin went to see his friend to ask about what happened years ago. He enthusiastically recounted that when Mayong's father passed away, he was worried about her being alone and not eating. So, he brought her some pastries, offered a few words of comfort, and then left. He also lacked the courage to confess his feelings to Mayong at the time. Dongjin estimated that Hyungu had stayed at Mayong's place for about 12 minutes and 35 seconds. Afterwards, while walking down the street, he encountered a wild boar and had to run for his life. After that escapade, he went home to welcome his friends. Everyone assumed he was about to hand out wedding invitations, but instead, Dongjin gifted them with a pile of books. It didn't take long for everyone to realize they were talking about Mayong. A gloomy atmosphere fell upon them whenever she was mentioned, as many people who had interacted with her had either died or been injured. They wondered why Dongjin was bringing up bad luck and witches. Dongjin pondered for a moment and then said, "You guys still call her a witch, huh? I want to say, let's not call her that anymore. I just couldn't say it before. I know it's awkward for you all, because these inexplicable things kept happening, and everyone was scared. Because you're scared, you just look for the easiest explanation." Dongjin shared that he had met Mayong on the subway, describing it like a miracle. "I hoped she'd live a good life, but she's been running away as if she's cursed. I really want everyone here to help her so she can have a normal life." His friend Da-yoon spoke up. "How are we supposed to help you?" Dongjin quickly replied, "Gather data, all the data on the incidents and accidents surrounding Mayong. I think there might be some kind of pattern. If we can find a pattern, we can predict and prevent unfortunate events from happening." Hearing this, Da-yoon took him to a place filled with old documents, not far from where Mayong used to sit and eat. Da-yoon worked at the school, so she had the key to open the door for Dongjin. She then went back to the faculty office. Dongjin went in and rummaged through the documents, looking through lots of notebooks, especially the background information of the past victims. He had them photocopied and divided into stacks for research. The next morning, a friend called to report that they had found someone named Hong Mo who knew Mayong. The two of them rushed over to talk to him. Hong Mo recounted, "Back then, I used to hang around Mayong all the time, teasing her and even cutting her hair tie. I only realized later that I liked Mayong. It turned out he was a childhood friend of hers. This was the person who had fallen into the sewer, but only suffered minor injuries." After talking, he turned toward his car to leave when a friend called with news that they found Hong Mo. This guy used to like Mayong and had an accident back in the days. They heard that he was living in Chuncheon, Sejong apartment, building 101. After hearing this, he ran to that building immediately. Dongjin didn't know which apartment was Hong Mo's, so he decided to ask each apartment one by one. Running around, he asked the neighbors if they knew someone named Hong Mo. The answer he received was no. After a while of searching, he sat down on the stairs to rest in frustration. Someone passed by and he asked them for Hong Mo, but they didn't know him either. He continued his search from room to room, his efforts finally rewarded. Dongjin found Hong Mo, who had become a father of 2 kids. The two agreed to talk in a park. Hong Mo recalled that when he was young, he liked Mayong and gave her a basket of candy, then went home. Accidentally, he got hit by a car which broke his leg. Dongjin estimated that Hong Mo stood in front of Mayong's house for about 10 minutes before leaving. After talking, Dong Jin went to the workplace of the other victim. That person's name was Ju Seong. He said, "At the autumn picnic, I went to see the maple leaves and saw Mayong sitting alone, so I went to ask her. I even gave Mayong a soda can." When she accepted the soda, Ju Seong planned to confess his feelings, but failed because Mayong got up and left. Thinking back to that scene, Ju Seong got goosebumps, because he was scared that if he confessed, he would have a tragic ending. After learning this information, Dong Jin sought out other victims. Each one had been injured to varying degrees. Gathering data on the injuries, Dong Jin went to the classroom where Mayong had once studied. He recalled her sitting there for a while, and then taking measurements with a ruler. Within a 10-meter radius in the classroom, and the distance between the victims and Mayong, all fell within this range. That evening, Dong Jin carefully reviewed the statistics from all the collected data. He looked for commonalities and differences among the victims. He categorized them into 3 groups: lightly injured, severely injured, and deceased. After hours of pondering, he finally formulated a hypothesis about the pattern of these incidents. Those who were in danger all had one thing in common. They had been in the same space as Mayong, talked to her, knew her, or confessed their feelings for her. Violating all of these conditions could even result in death. Even more frightening was that this hypothesis seemed to only apply to those who had romantic feelings for her. Staring at the results before him, Dong Jin felt exhausted and shocked. The cold, hard numbers painted a stark truth, a truth he had been trying to deny for so long. Then, Da-yoon came to see Dong Jin. She confessed that she was the one who had first spread the rumor that Mayong was a witch. The reason she did so was because she secretly liked Ik-jong, but he had feelings for Mayong. What made Da-yoon even more remorseful was that before his accident, Ik-jong had given Mayong a set of reference materials and encouraged her to do her best. Thinking about what she had done, Da-yoon couldn't help but feel regret. She hoped Dong Jin could help her convey her apology to Mayong, even though she knew she might never be forgiven. Afterward, Da-yoon revealed a crucial piece of information. Mayong had been accepted into Hanhut University, and was even in the same department as Ik-jong, something he had once told her. Knowing this information, Dong Jin set off early the next morning, packed his things, and headed to Ik-jong's place. He asked Ik-jong about the time he was stung by hornets in front of the church after interacting with Mayong, but he didn't remember it clearly because it had been so long ago. In the end, the only other piece of information Dong Jin gathered about Mayong was that she had dropped out of university early on. Next, Dong Jin went to the movie theater, making conversation with the employees there. One of them knew that Mayong often came to see movies at 12:30 p.m., most likely waiting for the theater to be less crowded. Afterwards, Dong Jin learned that this particular employee had feelings for Mayong, and had spent a long time with her, conversing a lot. He had even gone to the train station to confess his feelings for her. He had almost died, but luckily Dong Jin arrived at the hospital in time, and he was okay. Knowing this, Dong Jin thought to himself that his hypothetical rule was incorrect. There must be a variable that allowed this guy to escape. While doubting his theory, Dong Jin looked at the employee's name tag and asked in surprise, "Mayong only knows your nickname, not your real name." The young man thought for a moment and said, "Probably. I don't think I've ever mentioned my real name." Back home, Dong Jin revised his hypothesis, theorizing that danger only arises if Mayong knows the other person's real name. Afterwards, he tested the range of space near Mayong that would be dangerous, estimating the distance from his room to the rooftop railing of her house. Then, he added the 10-meter distance into her room. Having finished, Dong Jin accidentally made a noise, causing Mayong to look outside, startling him and making him hide behind the window. After calming down, Dong Jin observed Mayong enjoying the snowy weather. Just when he thought nothing was going to happen, the measuring tape automatically retracted, accidentally scratching Dong Jin's arm. This meant that being within 10 meters of Mayong was also dangerous. Now that Dong Jin has met the requirements for being around Mayong, it's uncertain when he might be in danger. The next morning, Jung Hyuk visited Yun-A, the victim. She still hasn't regained consciousness. Her mother confided in him, telling him from the bottom of her heart, "Every time I see you, officer, I feel sad. I keep hoping you'll come with news that you've caught the perpetrator, but I can see it in your eyes that you haven't." I'm worried that he's still out there, beyond the reach of the law, and that he'll find a way to harm my daughter again. Just thinking about it makes my heart clench. Jung Hyuk felt awkward, unsure how to face Yun-A's mother. He felt guilty for not having caught the culprit yet and could only apologize. Afterwards, he left her a pair of gloves. He went back to the station to look into the suspect named Myung-gi, who had been urgently arrested for stalking. Jung Hyuk also had to write a report explaining his shortcomings in failing to protect the victim, Yun-A. Currently, Dong-jin is meeting privately with Yoon-sil, talking to her. He introduced himself as Dong-jin, a data analyst. He wanted to ask her some things about Mayong. He also explained that he's investigating the accidents surrounding Mayong, compiling statistics and analyses, and looking for a pattern related to the accidents. Yoon-sil wondered why Dong-jin was going to such lengths. He explained that if he could identify a pattern, he could predict future accidents and, therefore, prevent them. He thought Yoon-sil would agree with his actions, but she told him he looked like a stalker. She didn't believe his data and statistics, thinking he was a con artist. Dong-jin calmly proved that what he was saying was true. We were both born in Tebik and went to the same schools. He showed her the accident documents that he had compiled. Yoon-sil was so shocked after reading them that she couldn't believe he had actually gone to meet and interview each of those people. Yoon-sil calmed down and asked, "These are just hypotheses and deductions. What if there are errors?" "That's why I needed to meet with you to gather more information," Dong-jin replied. Yoon-sil initially didn't want to help him, but because he genuinely wanted Mayong to have a normal life, she agreed. She talked about the time when Mayong was in college. At the time, Yoon-sil was the head of the English Department Student Association and met a mysterious, gloomy girl who was famous on campus. She was very popular with the male students and even the professors. One of those students was Jun-dong, her friend, who was hurt in so many places because he liked Mayong. Everyone gossiped that Mayong was the cause of all the accidents. Yoon-sil felt indignant on behalf of Mayong because she felt it was completely absurd. But the students said that those rumors had been going around since Mayong lived in Tebik. This rumor was said by Ik-jong, her hometown friend. Yoon-sil didn't believe it, until one day she went to meet Mayong to ask her to have a meal together, and she saw a teacher fall from a great height to the ground. She was so shocked that she couldn't believe it. This teacher had a crush on Mayong, and openly flirted with her by putting her name in the class's exam questions. That's why he had an accident. Mayong wanted to turn around and look, but Yoon-sil hugged her tightly. Mayong cried sadly, "It's all my fault." After that incident, the rumor that Mayong was a witch stopped being a rumor and became a fact. Mayong couldn't take it anymore, so she dropped out of school. Yoon-sil went to visit her when she heard that Mayong had dropped out. She was living in a dilapidated, soon-to-be-demolished, and deserted place. Mayong told her that she would be much more comfortable living in this remote place. "Both my parents are gone. You know how pathetic I am, so you don't need to pity me." Yoon-sil replied, "I don't have time to pity you. It's just that I'm worried about you. The first time I met someone I suddenly felt fond of, familiar from somewhere." After talking, she left her contact information and left, despite being a little reluctant. From then on, about 3 months later, Mayong called me. In the pouring rain, the young girl's house was broken into. So, Yoon-sil came to check on the situation. The girl also hadn't reported it to the police, which annoyed Yoon-sil, who questioned her. "Why do you keep living in this slum? Aren't you afraid being a girl living alone?" Mayong didn't want to, but her circumstances didn't allow her any comfort. Finally, Yoon-sil made a decision. "I'm going to be your sister." She hugged her and took her to her aunt's house. Mayong would rent the room on the top floor. And right now, Yoon-sil herself is the one checking and arranging the house for the girl. At this moment, Mayong seemed noticeably happier than usual. She felt happy to have a sister who appeared out of nowhere, saving her life at that time. Back in reality, Dong-jin and Yoon-sil went to the university, where the professor had fallen from the building. He measured the distance from the window to where Yoon-sil was standing, where Mayong had previously stood. Yoon-sil wondered what Dong-jin was doing. He said, "I'm testing whether the professor's case matches my 5 hypothetical conditions." Yoon-sil also analyzed, Professor Trong and Mayong were in the same space within 10 meters, and they talked to each other. They also knew each other and even professed their feelings. Then, suddenly a black car pulled up. It was the upperclassman who had broken his ribs in an accident and was bedridden because he had feelings for Mayong. He said, "I saw her walking and asked her to get in the car so I could give her a ride. But Mayong insisted on not getting in the car with me. So, I had to drive slowly behind her the whole way." Dongjin asked. "How long did that take?" The upperclassman happily said. "About 10 minutes. He added, "Hong An's way of liking Mayong is to express his feelings honestly. After being bedridden and thinking about it, I realized I hadn't even introduced myself to Mayong." So, Dongjin concluded, if Mayong doesn't know the name, it's not too dangerous. After that, the two went to find Jundong. He recounted in detail how he slipped and fell while chasing after Mayong. He was quite cheerful while telling how he was diagnosed with a sprained ankle and was in a cast for 10 weeks. He vaguely remembered the time from the lecture hall to where he fell was about 10 minutes. After finishing, the two returned to the car. Yoon-sil suspiciously investigated all aspects from the upperclassman to Jundong. "Can we minimize any errors?" Dongjin resolutely said. "The only way to minimize errors is for you to be the one to test this rule." Yoon-sil was worried that if his hypothesis was correct, Dongjin would be in danger. Yoon-sil was stunned when she realized Dongjin liked Mayong. He also expressed, "When I see her, I'm very happy. But now, when I think of Mayong, I feel heartbroken." When he got home, he stood near Mayong's house and saw a delivery person bringing items to Mayong. The shopkeeper said that it was someone from the Mayong supermarket. Dongjin noticed that the delivery person spent 5 minutes interacting with Mayong each time. Dongjin immediately ran to the Mayong convenience store to investigate, and discovered that every Tuesday the husband here would deliver to Mayong. While taking items to pay, a job posting of the store caught his attention. So the next day, Dongjin brought his resume to apply for the delivery person position. When the husband and wife saw the information about Dongjin, they were surprised that someone so highly educated, with a TOEIC score of 900 and near native English proficiency, would come here to apply for a job. The wife thought that someone with such a respectable appearance and education must be in some kind of desperate situation to be working as a delivery person. The husband was about to reject Dongjin, but the wife immediately agreed, although she said she could only pay him the minimum wage. Dongjin only needed to make deliveries on Tuesdays, so he explained that he only needed to work every Tuesday due to a special reason, and that the minimum wage they were offering was fine with him. After being hired, Dongjin immediately went to an outdoor gear store to buy himself a helmet for protection. Protecting himself after being in close contact with Mayong was also something he needed to pay attention to. Dongjin couldn't help but be excited as he put on all his protective gear and went to make his delivery to Mayong. According to his calculations, Dongjin would limit his maximum contact time with her to around 10 minutes. When he arrived at Mayong's place, she told him to just leave the package at the door. But not wanting to miss the opportunity to be close to the person he liked, Dongjin told her she needed to sign for the delivery and inspect the package to make sure nothing was missing. Being so close to the person he liked for the first time, Dongjin felt a sense of satisfaction. Meanwhile, Mayong was worried, afraid that prolonged contact with someone would bring them bad luck. But since it was the first time someone had been so attentive after a long period of isolation, Mayong proactively came out to greet Dongjin, thanking him for checking the package so thoroughly. The first experiment ended, and Dongjin didn't experience any bad luck. A few days later, he continued to experiment more frequently over several days and confirmed that as long as he stayed under 10 minutes, he wouldn't suffer any ill effects. Dongjin decided to play it bigger, which was to test himself in Mayong's zone for over 10 minutes. As usual, he went to Mayong's house and waited until more than 10 minutes had passed. After exceeding the 10 minutes, Dongjin returned home, and suddenly some signs appeared. The house lights flickered, and there was a clanging sound. As he took the next step, as expected, Dongjin experienced bad luck because he had stayed in Mayong's zone for over 10 minutes. Finally, Dongjin's first rule was verified. As long as he stayed no more than 10 minutes within a 10-meter radius of Mayong, he would be safe. The following week, Dongjin continued to deliver to Mayong as usual, but this time there was a slight difference. Having been out of touch and unable to communicate with the opposite sex for so long, Mayong felt at ease when the person in front of her could talk to her without anything bad happening. When it came time to pay, she suddenly pulled out a credit card, surprising Dongjin. He didn't know that she had called the store and asked to pay by card. Since he didn't have a payment device, Mayong had to go inside to find cash. After receiving the money, Dongjin managed to escape the area in time, but bad luck still struck. He was almost hit by another delivery person. Thinking he was safe, a sign from a boarding house detached and fell directly on Dongjin. After this incident, he realized a new rule. There was also a limit to how long he could converse with her. The fact that this guy came in for treatment every week was starting to worry Dr. Boksai. Dongjin insisted he was fine, but when his hand was being manipulated, he screamed like a little girl being bullied. The following week, when Mayong heard the delivery bell, she couldn't help but look forward to thanking the delivery person. She even planned to give them a bottle of water. But when she went downstairs, she discovered that it wasn't the guy she usually talked to. From that day on, checking the package every time it was delivered seemed to become a habit for Mayong. To better protect himself, Dongjin decided to go to an outdoor equipment store to buy some extra protective gear. To test his second rule about Mayong, Dongjin started counting the number of lines spoken during the next delivery. As always, they checked the goods together. Dongjin took the opportunity to count the number of sentences Mayong said until the payment was completed. Seeing the injury on Dongjin's hand, she asked if it was a result of delivering there. Not wanting the person he liked to worry, Dongjin said it was from exercising at home and being careless. Just seeing the contented expression on Mayong's face was enough to make Dongjin feel satisfied. But the number of sentences they spoke exceeded 10. As a result, the rule was applied to Dongjin, and he had an accident while driving home. The new rule about Mayong was verified, but the price to pay was a bit steep compared to previous times. Yoon-sil found out about Dongjin's injury, so she came to the hospital to visit. Seeing his haggard appearance, she asked if Dongjin had enough money to cover his medical expenses. Fortunately, Dongjin had insurance paid for by Jung Hyuk. Otherwise, he would be in debt because of the hospital bills. Before fully understanding Mayong and seeing Dongjin constantly immersing himself in researching the rules surrounding Mayong, Yoon-sil advised him to stop before he harmed himself. Dongjin stubbornly said that as long as he didn't violate the death rule with Mayong, he would be fine. He'd put so much effort into pursuing her for years. After being discharged from the hospital, Dongjin decided to try being near Mayong again to test the rule about staying 10 meters away from her. Today was the day Mayong was taking a bus tour around the city. Because Dongjin wanted to travel with the person he liked, he also got on the bus and sat exactly 11 meters away from her. But being near the person he liked was never enough. But before the happiness could last, an unexpected incident occurred outside of Dongjin's predictions. Mayong gave up her seat for an old woman and moved closer, about 5 meters away from him. He anxiously started timing it. As the bus approached a bridge, it encountered a traffic jam. 5 minutes passed, and there were increasing signs that he was in danger. A sudden storm came, and a truck loaded with sharp steel was coming close by and right next to Dongjin. Realizing he was facing death, he decided to protect his life and jumped off the bus, shocking everyone. Suddenly, the wind blew off Dongjin's hat, causing Mayong to recognize that he was the person who was always around her that year, and the funerals of those unlucky souls. Confessing to Mayong, only he felt pity for everyone. From then on, Mayong also started to notice that bespectacled classmate. Those accidental glances they shared made her feel like she wasn't alone. Not just once, but many times. And why did Mayong know Dongjin's name? He'd installed a canopy with a "Gifted by Dongjin" inscription on it. That's how Mayong knew his name. Back in the present, to save his life, Dongjin jumped into the river to escape the Grim Reaper's scythe. Just as he jumped, a bolt of lightning struck a lamppost right next to where Dongjin had been standing. Luckily, Dongjin was okay. The emergency medical team quickly took him to the hospital. When she got home, Mayong rushed to search online for news about a man jumping into the Han River. She wanted to make sure that friend was all right. And thankfully, a news article reported that the man who jumped into the river was safe, which made Mayong feel incredibly relieved. No one had died because of Dongjin's actions. His best friend, Jung Hyuk, came to check on him and said, "Are you into extreme sports or something? Playing a one-life game like it's a movie?" Dongjin said, "I was just verifying data related to Mayong." When Siu came by, Dongjin asked her, "If the people who confess to Mayong get hurt or die, what about the people Mayong loves? I want to hear it directly from Mayong." This was the last favor Dongjin wanted to ask of Siu. As a result, the next day, Siu invited Mayong on a trip with her, in reality, to help Dongjin gather information about her. Arriving at a campsite by a frozen river, Siu started asking about Mayong's love life. "Have you ever been in love with anyone?" Mayong didn't hesitate to start telling about her first love. Back then, at a church, she had a crush on an older guy named Ik-jong. Because she liked him, Mayong made sure to be at church every time. One time, she met Ik-jong at a pharmacy and found out he had epilepsy. Time went by. 1 year, Mayong thought she wouldn't see Ik-jong again, but one day he suddenly came to find her. Ik-jong then gave Mayong an English study guide, but right after giving it to her, Ik-jong had an accident, like the people who had liked her before. Mayong even brought medicine to his house to give to Ik-jong, but because she wasn't brave enough, Mayong had to return home. And after that incident, Ik-jong also left the village. Years later, when Mayong went to college, Ik-jong reappeared in front of her and introduced himself again, as if nothing had happened. Mayong said, "I'm also grateful that I got into college thanks to that English study guide." But Ik-jong didn't remember any of this. He didn't even remember the study guide he gave her back then. Mayong decided to give up, and she stopped liking him from that moment on. Siu was surprised. "That's Ik-jong, the valedictorian of our department," she said. "Mayong really has no eye for men. He's the one who spread rumors about you in our department." Even though she knew he was the one who spread the bad rumors, Mayong still forgave Ik-jong because she was already considered a cursed witch anyway. Siu, in order to confirm for Dongjin at home whether the rules he discovered were correct, asked each question in turn. The first 2 questions were the distance between the two and the time spent talking. Mayong said that the two had talked for quite a long time at a close distance, sometimes for about an hour or 2, not counting afternoon tea at the church. The third question was the name. Mayong said she knew Ik-jong's name. And the fourth question was whether Ik-jong had confessed to Mayong. Mayong said it was almost like he confessed, saying it was in the English study guide that Ik-jong gave her. Hearing this, Dongjin at home immediately went to search for Ik-jong's notebook. He discovered that it did, in fact, contain a love confession. As a result, the next day, Dongjin called Ik-jong to a library to interrogate him about the past. Sitting there, Dongjin asked, "What are you hiding from me? Is it true?" Ik-jong immediately denied it. Dongjin brought up the incident where he lied to everyone about being stung by a bee. "Is it true?" Realizing he had been found out, Ik-jong admitted, "About that day, when I woke up in the hospital, the rumors had already spread, so I just went along with it." Dongjin became upset. "Why are you blaming it on her? Why would you treat Mayong like that? Do you even know how much those rumors tormented her?" Ik-jong asked, "You believe those ridiculous rumors? About someone who finds patterns of bad luck surrounding Mayong?" Dongjin said, "She really is a witch. According to the patterns I found, you should have died a long time ago." Ik-jong asked, "Did I ever confess to Mayong?" Dongjin took out Ik-jong's English study book and showed him the last page. "That's the love confession from back then that you made to Mayong. You got it when Mayong threw away her old books and notebooks." Through the data that Dongjin had collected, he concluded that Ik-jong had met one condition, which is why he hadn't died. That was that Mayong liked him. He then asked Ik-jong if he really liked Mayong. Ik-jong admitted, "I did like her back then, that's why I wrote those silly confessions, but I was just embarrassed about my epilepsy, so I blamed it on Mayong." For someone who's been half dead trying to find a pattern to be near Mayong like Dongjin, Ik-jong is certain you might die if the hypotheses you told me are true. After returning home, Dongjin looked at the people who had died after confessing to Mayong. he made a bold decision to prove the pattern one last time. That was to confess to her himself. He didn't want to be a stalker who made Mayong suffer any longer. Before that, Dongjin had to exercise to have a healthy body to resist the bad luck. He would prepare everything until he met Mayong. Day after day, he decided to go all in on this. After the confession, Dongjin would leave this place. He even left a message with his best friend and the supermarket lady. "I'm leaving. Thank you both for helping me so much during this time." After arriving at her house, Dongjin rang the doorbell, pretending to be a delivery guy from the supermarket. But when she opened the door, she discovered it was Dongjin. As they spoke, Dongjin began counting the number of sentences they were conversing, folding down a finger for each question. Mayong begged him not to say anything, because she feared that if he came here to confess, Dongjin might die. But he wasn't afraid. Why should you suffer like this for something you didn't do? Although Mayong pleaded with Dongjin to say no more and leave, he only left a gift and said these were gifts that his friends from TB gave him. Although he had 1,000 words he wanted to say, he would refrain from saying them today. Although it was over 10 sentences, as he was about to leave, Dongjin decided to turn back and encourage Mayong. "Do the things you want to do. Everything will be all right," implicitly telling her to be brave and love someone. This was also Dongjin's last words. He also knew that after this, he might encounter misfortune according to the pattern he had found. As he carried his suitcase down the street, everywhere he looked, there were signs of death approaching. And as Dongjin walked in the middle of the road, a truck came speeding towards him. After Mayong brought the gift from Dongjin home, she opened it to find it contained pictures of her old house. Dongjin himself had gone all the way there to take those photos for her, and there was also a video from her friend, Da-yoon. She was so happy to learn that Mayong was doing well and had a better life now than she did when she was little, and Da-yoon felt really envious of Mayong. Back when they were kids, she was the one who spread the rumor that Mayong was a witch, and now she felt deeply regretful. But aside from that, Da-yoon said she was really happy to have played with Mayong. She couldn't help but laugh just thinking about the time Hong Mo cut the rope and ran away, falling into the sewer. But now, even he was getting married soon. Da-yoon also expressed that she had wanted to apologize to Mayong for a long time, which was why she asked Dongjin to send the video to Mayong. After watching the video, Mayong couldn't hold back her emotions and cried, knowing that there were still friends who genuinely cared about her. On the other side of things, Jung Hyuk was going to an internet cafe to look for the assailant connected to someone he knew, named Myonggi. When this guy saw Jung Hyuk come in to investigate, he slipped out the back door, thinking he could get away scot-free. But he ran right into Jung Hyuk's subordinate. And so, the game of cat and mouse began. The subordinate didn't forget to call Jung Hyuk to join in the fun. Later, at a restaurant, Jung Hyuk's subordinate thought he had finally caught the assailant, but he fought back, grabbing a beer bottle to threaten him. While the two were struggling, Myonggi made a dirty move, jamming a broken piece of the bottle into the subordinate's thigh, causing him to collapse in pain. Because of this, he couldn't continue chasing Myonggi. But this was a game of two cats chasing one mouse, and Jung Hyuk immediately caught him and punched him a couple of times. This guy, seemingly not having had enough, taunted Jung Hyuk, "What's the deal with that little Yuna girl? Did she put you up to something, or what? Is that why you're so determined to go after me?" Jung Hyuk flew into a rage and beat him to within an inch of his life. Because of this, the next day at the police station, Jung Hyuk was suspended from duty and transferred to another unit for abusing his authority and assaulting a suspect. Even though he was being transferred, Jung Hyuk didn't forget to exercise to stay in shape. Meanwhile, his subordinate came to visit, and Jung Hyuk, a colleague, brought over a contract. Jung Hyuk had to sign it to confirm his transfer to another post. His colleague, Soo-hyun, even gave him water and smiled, congratulating him, which made the subordinate a little jealous. "What about me, Soo-hyun?" As one person left, another arrived. Yoon-sil also came to see Jung Hyuk because she wanted to talk to him privately, making the subordinate jealous again. Some people get 4 cartons of milk, others get none. The reason Yoon-sil came to see Jung Hyuk was to ask if he had seen Dongjin, and when was the last time he'd seen him. Jung Hyuk remembered that it was about 2 weeks ago while he was chasing a criminal. When he tried calling Dong Jin back, he didn't answer. Yoon Sil said, "You call that friendship? What kind of friends don't contact each other for that long?" Right now, she's worried sick that Dong Jin might be in danger, or maybe he's already checked out. She said, "Dong Jin is your friend, isn't he? Don't you feel even a little bit concerned?" Jung Hyuk remained nonchalant. His phone is still ringing, which means he's either okay or just too busy to answer. That's what he said, but during the meal, a junior colleague who joined him brought back memories of Dong Jin from years ago. He also decided to investigate himself to see if Dong Jin really was missing. At a company, Jung Hyuk asked Dong Jin's former colleague and learned that he had quit his high-paying job, mainly because he had something he absolutely had to do. Although the colleague asked, Dong Jin didn't explain clearly, only remembering that Dong Jin had asked him to send his remaining belongings by express delivery. Using that address, Jung Hyuk arrived at the place where Dong Jin used to live. After breaking into Dong Jin's apartment, Jung Hyuk only found an empty apartment and Dong Jin's belongings. The landlord said that Dong Jin had bothered the part-time worker a lot because he wanted to rent this room. Following the landlord's advice, Jung Hyuk went to see the part-time worker to ask about Dong Jin's whereabouts. The part-time worker only said that he didn't understand why Dong Jin had wanted to switch rooms with him at all costs. He didn't know the specific reason, except that he worked at a supermarket one day a week for a few weeks. Jung Hyuk then went to the supermarket where Dong Jin used to work to ask questions. The owners of the supermarket only knew that Dong Jin was a talented and diligent person, but since he was hospitalized, he had quit working there altogether. After returning home, Jung Hyuk opened Dong Jin's computer to find more information, but he had completely deleted the adult movie history. Jung Hyuk couldn't find any other clues. Suddenly, Woo Soo called. It took a while for her friend to answer, making her very worried. She even badmouthed Jung Hyuk, calling him a fussy and unapproachable guy. Jung Hyuk then said, "It's me." Woo Soo went silent. As a result, the two met up to talk. He gave her a book on Dong Jin's shelf and said, "Usually, you can guess a person's interests by looking at their bookshelf. But when I looked at Dong Jin's books, there was no pattern at all. The only thing I discovered was that the translator of those books was Park Min-jong. Coincidentally, it's related to a travel documentary program, and the person involved is none other than you, Woo Soo." Woo Soo then exclaimed, "Now you're more like a detective than a jerk." She asked Jung Hyuk, "Do you believe in witches?" The question was exactly the same as the one Dong Jin had asked him before. Hearing this, Jung Hyuk immediately went back. Woo Soo couldn't help but say she knew why Dong Jin lived in that apartment. So the two of them went back to Dong Jin's apartment together. Woo Soo pointed out to him, "The house opposite is Mayong's." Looking at the window pane, Jung Hyuk knocked on it and discovered that it was a one-way mirror commonly used in prison cells. If you turn off the lights, people outside won't be able to see what's going on inside. Jung Hyuk turned off the lights, gestured to Woo Soo to step aside, and a message was printed on the window. Jung Hyuk quickly turned on the computer to investigate the web history and found that there was indeed a blog. Over time, the post was published on that day. Jung Hyuk remembered that it coincided with the day Dong Jin texted him and disappeared. He figured Dong Jin had set up this blog to record something. He immediately entered the account name shown on the screen, but couldn't crack the password yet. He remembered back in college, when everyone else had gone home, Dong Jin would still be in the classroom. Jung Hyuk would always quietly stay with his slightly eccentric friend, so he wouldn't feel alone. Dong Jin was trying to solve a difficult question on his own. Jung Hyuk thought he couldn't figure it out, but Dong Jin had already solved the tough question. He said the answer would always be found within the question itself. He looked at the screen and saw the words, "Statistical Report." First attempt, no luck. He remembered Dong Jin always carried a statistical table with him. Jung Hyuk rummaged through the documents on the bookshelf and found the table. So, he tried logging in again with a student ID number from the statistics sheet. His prediction was right. The answer was indeed in the question. This was the clue Dong Jin had left for Jung Hyuk. All the accident events had been recorded by him. The two of them opened Dong Jin's locker and found that all his protective gear was torn and patched all over. Seeing this, Jung Hyuk decided to go and meet Mayong to ask her about the last time she saw Dongjin. He also called a colleague to check if there were any unidentified corpses in the 20-30 age range. At night, when Yoon Sil was asleep, Jung Hyuk went to see Mayong on his own. She was surprised and wondered why someone would be out at this hour. Jung Hyuk looked at his watch. He only had 10 minutes to talk to Mayong. He told Mayong that he had a few things to verify, and she only needed to say a few words. Jung Hyuk had personally tested Dongjin's rules, which were to talk for less than 10 sentences and approach Mayong within 10 minutes. Jung Hyuk said he believed in the story that contact with her would lead to death. After saying that, Jung Hyuk left. Back at home, after Jung Hyuk left, Yoon Sil opened a statistical document. Unexpectedly, it contained information about people who had been in contact with Mayong and the misfortunes they had encountered. What's more, it also included information about a female victim named Juna, who had been in love with Jung Hyuk, had an accident, and didn't survive. Yoon Sil suddenly realized something was wrong. As for Jung Hyuk, after talking to Mayong for an hour, he remembered that the deadly rule only applied to Mayong's lovers. He had talked to Mayong for over an hour without encountering anything unlucky. As he was returning, Yoon Sil went to find him and told him that she had figured something out. The reason why Dongjin left clues for Jung Hyuk was perhaps because he was also a witch like Mayong. This became more evident when a female colleague who gave Jung Hyuk a canned drink injured her leg the next day. Jung Hyuk went to Mayong's house to give her the document that Dongjin couldn't give her 10 years ago, which was a statistical document to refute the claim that Mayong was a witch. When Dongjin was in his early 20s, he went to Mayong's house to give her the statistics he had compiled, but Mayong was no longer in that painful place. Jung Hyuk said that the results of many cases surrounding Mayong were just coincidences, and the cause was not Mayong, and she was not a witch. That was what Dongjin had wanted to say to Mayong for a long time. He had tried to prove it with data, but this report was full of flaws. Back then, Dongjin's professor said that his statistics were just trying to cram data to make it fit. After reviewing the questions in the statistical data sheet, the timing of the accidents on the internet didn't match what Dongjin had done. Jung Hyuk said that the more people were involved with Mayong, the more frightened he became. The only common factor in the accidents was Mayong, and there was no data to calculate that rule. Currently, Mayong has disappeared, and she only left a message saying that she went to meet her. Jung Hyuk was curious, so he asked what happened on the day when Dongjin met her. She also recounted that Dongjin came to see her that day and gave her a gift. He also expressed his feelings but didn't confess his love. After telling Jung Hyuk, he took her to Dongjin's house, where Mayong discovered that he had been following her from behind for a long time. Jung Hyuk said that if she wanted to file a complaint, he would testify for her. But all Dongjin did was try to figure out the pattern. Jung Hyuk will show you what Dongjin was trying to do. He turned on his computer and logged into Dongjin's personal block account. It was filled with data that Dongjin had organized and collected about Mayong. Mayong hesitated, unsure if she should look at the information. She had hoped she wasn't a witch, but as Jung Hyuk said, he wasn't doing this to prove Mayong was a witch. He was just doing it to find a way to love Mayong. Now it's your turn to keep an eye on Dongjin. Jung Hyuk left Mayong alone at his best friend's place and left. You're something else, Dongjin. His statistics continued, even as he replaced himself with the last variable. After returning to headquarters, Jung Hyuk asked a subordinate to track down Dongjin's current location. He was still safe, living somewhere out there. The next day, Yoon Sil came to see Jung Hyuk and asked him something. Mayong has disappeared too. Jung Hyuk replied, "Oh, I see." This surprised Yoon Sil, as he seemed so indifferent. Jung Hyuk had been avoiding Yoon Sil's calls all week, so she came to see him in person today to talk. Jung Hyuk didn't want to hurt her, so he sat a certain distance away from Yoon Sil. Seeing him sitting so far away and talking so bluntly, Yoon Sil was irritated and said, "Is this how you talk to people? Do you feel good about looking down on others like this?" It was just that Yoon Sil really didn't know where Mayong had gone, so she came to find Jung Hyuk. At this point, Jung Hyuk said, "Do you know why Dongjin chose me as an example to record in his block?" Seeing that she didn't know, Jung Hyuk asked her directly, "Yoon Sil, are you interested in me?" The question took her by surprise. This guy was so direct, without any tact. But after saying that, Jung Hyuk immediately applied Dongjin's rule, because he himself was a witch like Mayong. In those years, Jung Hyuk always brought bad luck to people around him who liked him, so he always isolated himself. But until that clueless friend came to see Jung Hyuk, he didn't even bother to respond, but Dongjin didn't care. Eventually, they became best friends in college, always together. Until he saw the statistics on denying the existence of witches, Jung Hyuk knew that there were others like him in this world. Dongjin had been trying to do something since that day, but from the beginning, everything was in vain. He could not find a way to prove an obvious phenomenon that existed. One day while drinking, Dongjin suddenly asked Jung Hyuk about a kind of deadly pattern that clung like a curse, whether he believed in witches or not. Despite his failure, Dongjin never gave up. Jung Hyuk had rejected people just like Mayong had. What surprised Jung Hyuk even more was that when he opened his best friend's block, he discovered that Dongjin had investigated similar cases around him and used them as data to draw conclusions. Dongjin had been trying to save him as well, not just Mayong. Because if the rules that Dongjin found were correct, not only the two of them, but others could also get along better with people. That's why Dongjin left clues for Jung Hyuk. Jung Hyuk would know what to do next. That's also why Jung Hyuk kept his distance from Yoon Sil that night. Returning to the present, Jung Hyuk knows that Yoon Sil likes him, so he tells her he needs more time. As for Mayong, she's traveled to a distant land, where Dongjin is. Yoon Sil calls Jung Hyuk to ask why Dongjin had to go so far away. He tells her that Dongjin has been expressing his feelings with all his heart for a very long time. He left because he thought the other person also needed time to open up to him. Perhaps Dongjin had bet everything on the final variable he discovered. Hearing this, Yoon Sil says that Jung Hyuk probably needs time like that too. At a lake in Austria, Dongjin has met Mayong as promised. The two of them sit together by the lake and start chatting about random things. Today, Dongjin will decide to express his feelings completely. "My mom asked me to convey her apology to you all those years ago. It took me a while to get here, and I'm sorry I couldn't come sooner." But Mayong feels it's soon enough, not late at all. Although she's a little worried and uneasy, Mayong feels great because she's finally come to a place she always wanted to go. If it weren't for Dongjin, she probably wouldn't have had the courage to go to a place she liked and step outside her own world. The weather starts to change. Dongjin hopes he'll be alright, and then he confesses his feelings for Mayong. "I like you, Mayong." But as he confesses, the weather gets worse and worse. Dongjin isn't afraid and continues to express himself. "I respect you, your opinions, and your choices. I won't force you to do anything." As he's about to leave, Mayong stops him and reveals, "Actually, since I came here, thoughts about Dongjin have been constantly on my mind. I started to feel worried and uneasy, and I discovered another rule that hasn't been explored yet. There's a rule that Dongjin doesn't know. People who like me end up having accidents when they're away from me, but people who are near me are fine. This is the final variable. Min doesn't want you to leave her anymore. Lee Dongjin, I like you too." Since that confession, the storm has subsided as if nothing happened. The two of them can finally be openly together without worrying about any incidents that might occur. As for Yoon Sil, she's waiting to meet Jung Hyuk because she wants to be with him more than ever. She doesn't want them to keep calling each other over the phone. But Jung Hyuk is just worried that Yoon Sil will be in danger like Dongjin if she's with him. He can't identify what that emotion is yet and still needs more time. Yoon Sil gets frustrated and scolds him, "You idiot," and will confirm what emotion it is that he's feeling. When getting on the bus, she takes the initiative and confesses to Jung Hyuk. As soon as the bus leaves, a text message from Dongjin arrives, telling him about the final rule: "You absolutely must not leave the person you like." Jung Hyuk immediately runs after the bus and calls Yoon Sil. "You can't leave me. I'm coming there right now." Seeing Jung Hyuk chasing after her, Yoon Sil asks the bus driver to stop so she can get off with him. Finally, the two of them can express their feelings to each other just like the couple Mayong and Dongjin.